Okay, welcome. Thank you for bearing with us as we're figuring out our first hybrid in-person and virtual resident artist talk. Hi, I'm Natalie Swachina. I'm our Associate Deputy Director here at the Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. I want to thank you for all coming for our first resident artist talk in our 2024 cycle. We have 11 amazing artists here this cycle, and we have 4 in studio now and residents now, and we'll be hearing from our first 3 this afternoon. All 3 artists started in September, and all 3 are ending at the end of this month in November. So you still have a couple of weeks to check them out. And then we'll be holding continuous talks throughout the next year. I also want to thank Crafting the Future. We've done a collaboration this cycle with our resident artists who provide supplemental support as well as help spreading the word on our program. So thank you for Crafting the Future. They've been wonderful collaborators for us. So I'm going to get us started today with Anne Johnson. Anne Johnson is a fiber artist. She was born in London, England, and was raised in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Anne graduated from Prairie View A&M University of Texas with a BS in home economics. She later earned an MA in humanities from the University of Houston, Clear Lake, and an MFA from the Academy of the Arts University in San Francisco with a concentration in printmaking. As a professor at Prairie View A&M, she has received the Distinguished Professor's Faculty of the Year Award and repeatedly been recognized as Art Teacher of the Year. As an interdisciplinary artist, Anne has a passion for exploring issues, particularly within the Black community, which has led to engaging work such as the Hoop Dreaming Collection, a series that explores social issues within the Hoop Dreams. Her installations, Converse Real Talk, has been exhibited in Texas, Missouri, and New York. She's been an artist in residence at the Kala Art Institute in Berkeley, California, at Project Grow Houses here in Houston, and at the Plains Art Museum in Fargo, North Dakota. In 2013 and 2021, she exhibited at the Texas Biennial. She has been acknowledged as an artist to watch by the International Review of African American Art and was listed as one of the 10 most transformative artists of 2022 by Black Art in America. So Anne, I'm going to turn it over to you. And please, anyone will have questions at the end of her talk, as well as we can moderate from Facebook. And please drop any questions you might have for Facebook, and I'll ask them to Anne. Okay, Anne, now we can do our muting.
Unmute. Okay. That was a Beyonce reference. Everybody on mute, because I went to the concert. All right. Thank you for coming out this afternoon. And what our gracious host did not tell you, I have an associate's degree in fashion merchandising. I used to babysit a little girl named Natalie way back when. So I'm glad to be here. I'm very excited, love the studio space, and I will share with you what I do. This is like my little cover slide. I heard somebody say, I said it, I meant it, I reflected. And so I like to speak truth to power when I share my work. Interdisciplinary is the new fancy word for mixed media. My primary practice involves fiber and experimental printmaking. So I will print on just about anything except paper, right? Leaves, feathers, bricks, anything except paper, cotton. And the intaglio process is the process that I embrace, which requires a printing press, good old fashioned printing press. I work in series, assemblage, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of everything. And this piece, actually that piece on the right, is in the studio. My tribe, I always like to share who my influences are. And in my heart of hearts, I believe I'm Betty Saar's lost daughter. Love Betty Saar. They do have a work at the Museum of Fine Arts. David Hammonds, Allison Saar, and Radcliffe Bailey, they each have been very important to me in terms of being inspired to create. Allison Saar is the reason why I print on cotton. She was a keynote speaker at a printmaking conference. I expected to see her prints, but not her sculptures. And seeing them together in the same space made me think, I wonder what it would be like to print on cotton. I totally fanned out when I saw her. It was a little embarrassing. So initially, the first odd objects that I printed on were corn husk and feathers. And this was all ancestry. My great grandmother, my father's grandmother, They called her Grandma Emma. They also called her Indian Emma. She was what we call Black Indian. And I was just fascinated by her images that we had at home growing up. And I grew up in Wyoming, so I would frequent the powwows. And when I got to grad school, it all kind of came together. It made sense why I love the powwow so much. And the way the women's danced and their garments flowed and the feathers. And then I started to print on feathers, and she looked one way on a eagle turkey feather, and she looked much more mysterious. Because I'm a teacher, I have a red light. Much more mysterious on this side, you know, because the image was kind of lost within the softness of the feather. And then I started to do a series of prayer fans, because if you've been to a powwow and you see the women dance, they have a fan, right? And so I made mine recognize who I am. So there's an Afro pick at the base, and it honors my African ancestry, African-American ancestry, and my indigenous ancestry. And then here in the top, these are my parents, right here, and then that's her, and that's me. And so that kind of opened the door for my process. And I was so fortunate to have a professor when I was in graduate school who let me fly. She didn't make me do auditions. She didn't make me do, she just kind of embraced that I was really onto something new, and she just let me fly. So at one point, I don't do this as often, but occasionally I do make paper out of food. I bought a food dehydrator, supposed to be making healthy snacks. And I was like, ooh, paper, yes. And so this is yam, sweet potatoes. And for whatever reason, that paper lasts forever. And that is the Great Autumn Night, Houston's own performing artist. And I like to tell stories within the layers. And so cotton and America, African Americans, is going to have its own story. We know what that story is. And then there's a young girl in the middle. She actually, the original picture, she's holding a white baby. That's what she did. And then autumn is kind of the future of all of that. And it's a very tiny piece. And so I thought I got all the flash out. In 2013 and 2014, I did this series called Nesting. And this was, I guess, iPhone 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. And I noticed that my students were just they would not look up. And I told them, you're nesting away in your own world. You're missing out on life. You're nesting away. So I started creating these nests. Well, I purchased the nest, but I would put my feather prints on the inside. And then when they're suspended, they just kind of float. And it was kind of just kind of looked up and you could see the images. And they were like lumbering and sleep, you know, just to go with the message of sleeping your life away. So in 2023, we're going to talk about this in just a second. So I was this is my 4th residency. I had 4 residencies in a row this year since June. And one of them was at Kansas City Art Institute, and they asked me to do a student with the project. So I brought the nesting project to them. And they said, wouldn't it be cool to light a nest on fire? You know, and I'm like, yeah. And then I looked at the picture and I had on these nylon sweatpants. The wind was blowing. I was like, y'all tried to kill me, you know, it was just, but it was so cool. And it ended up looking like this. And so it created a beautiful nest. And then inside of that is a leaf print. And then the imagery is of the Gregory School here in Freedmanstown. And I've always interacted with fibers, particularly cotton. I have someone that brings me cotton every year from a plantation. And this piece called In Her Honor, it shows, those are images of me, but it references the Aunt Jemima Mammy image. And if you follow the path, I'm taking the scarf off. Right, so the scarf is being removed. And each fabric is very significant. This is African mudcloth. These are vintage quilts, but this has a symbol, either the bear claw or the North Star, which was representative of the Underground Railroad. And this is the scarf that I have on in the picture. So everything tells a story. And then the cotton just enhances that story. And so I'm doing a project with Freedmanstown. So when you go to the studio, you're going to see all these concrete bricks all over the place. And it's my student, Mishka. Shout out to Mishka because she's been so helpful. And what I'm doing with this project is I'm taking archival photographs in the archives from Freedmanstown, like this gentleman. And I'm reshooting these photographs with current residents, which is this gentleman. Turns out they're related. We didn't even know. And he's like 8th generation. So the residents that still live there are generational. If you don't know where Freedmanstown is, 4th Ward, not far from here. And the heartbeat of the community are the brick paved streets. And so for the project, once I rephotographed, I then transformed the image on bricks. And so these were some of the early prints, and I make the bricks myself. I'm extra like that. And this is one of the final, a little difficult to see on the screen, but the process tells the whole story. And I really wanted to honor the community. And because it's gentrified now, and there's very few streets left. And so we're losing the history of that community. And this one, we just did one like this today, so you can actually see it in the studio. Traditional shotgun house, that's the original photograph, that's the new photograph, and that's the image on concrete. And then at times my work has been considered artivist. I've been considered, artivism or artivist. This was in 2021, Stacey Abrams, after the runoff election, which was interesting because she has history of family being in the cotton fields. And I printing her in cotton extends the story, and the cotton bowls kind of look like a skirt, and it's red, white, and blue. And these are some of the other activist-oriented images that I've created. This one is called Plantation Lullaby. This was in 2019. An unarmed person was killed, and for me in that community, it's like this keeps happening over and over again, and the same excuses. No one is held accountable. It's the same old song every time, and that's what this piece is about. And then Converse Real Talk, which Natalie mentioned. This is the Missouri rendition. Originally, this was exhibited at Women in Their Work in Austin, and the basis of this project is to have a face-to-face conversation. This was created in 2016 when Barack Obama was still president and people were still hiding behind their keyboards, not running up the walls of the Capitol, doing crazy things. And so it encouraged people to just sit down and have a face-to-face conversation. And people would go on their lunch break in Austin and sit there for hours and just talk. They ended up extending the exhibition. And on the trees are printed images of leaves that I printed. These we printed here. And these are sycamore leaves. And the point is somebody's always watching and somebody's listening. So when you sit under that tree and have a face-to-face conversation, somebody is always looking and listening. And Houston is a great city for sycamore leaves. And so these are some of the leaves, and this is how it looks in Kansas City. And then another series I do is called Auction Block Series. And this is a direct reference with slavery. And these are cotton prints. I print on raw cotton and bonded cotton, and it has actual cotton bowls on the inside. So the words are very significant to the slave trade, but the images are much more contemporary. So, what's happening to these generations and generations of people after this initial evil act. So that's another conversation to be had. And this one, which is still relevant, Stop Erasing My Existence. As a teacher, it bothers me that so much is being erased from the school books. Books are being banned. Art teachers are the new history teachers, right? Because there's only so much that teachers are allowed to teach anymore. And that's what this one is. That's a detail of it. That is my niece. And then finally, I do work with ironing boards as well. And I think of ironing boards as a sacred symbol. And when I create them, it's to honor the women or woman who has to take care of other people's family before she could take care of her own, right? She had to spend all day and night feeding other people's kids, cleaning their houses, and then try to come home and take care of her own house. And that woman is so often not seen. She's the woman in the shadows. And so I found, with this one, I found a lot of vintage boards, and I was able to transfer print the images. And these boards, they were worn out like that. That story was already told. I just put a face on it. And then on the other side, I rusted that myself on those. And these, which were so interesting, and this was at Hooks Epstein last year, these were very, very layered wooden boards. And when I cut them down the middle, those layers were so thick. I said, I'm not doing anything else because this is a very heavy story. And this person, it was just like towels and sheets and just over and over again, because people worked with what they had. And so they couldn't afford a new board, so they just put a sheet or a towel on top of it. And some of y'all know what I'm talking about. And it would be like this thick. And so inside, it's a little boy's face. It's called For His Protection. And this one is called Layered Existence. So when you get in close, you can see these faces printed on cotton. And then finally, for real, my artist collective, Rue, these are my sisters. If you don't know who these artists are, please find out. Delita Martin, somebody's preaching. Delita Martin, Lovey Olivia, and Rebea Bayin, those are my sisters. We have an artist collective called Rue. And thought I got the flash out, I'm sorry. I did this piece, it was at Lawndale for a long time in the window, called See Me Again. And it was inspired by John Biggers, Houston's own John Biggers did this piece called Houses, Shotguns, Third Ward. And so I remixed it. So I took our images and put them on ironing boards. And then we are each holding a house. The women in the portrait are holding birdhouses. And so we are each holding a different house that represents gentrification, education, religion, or you know, different types of thoughts. And this is what it looked like outside. And you could see, again, there was another woman in shadows. So when you drove by and you see it, you could see her, and we represented her. And in the original image, the women are standing behind the tracks because that's how it was back then. Different communities were behind the tracks. We're standing on top of the tracks. Times have changed. So we are protecting our community. And if you get to the studio, the piece that I'm working on now is actually a long brick wall of myself and my Rue sisters, which is, I'm excited about creating that. And that is my stuff. Any questions? Sure. One question. Okay, thank you. Sure. Okay. Sure.
To me, you talk a lot about your students, and you're always talking about your students coming to visit you, and you've mentioned your students several times. What does that mean to be a teacher in your life as an artist, as an educator? It seems to be very powerful that transforms to your art as well.
Yeah, it's important to me that the first thing I tell the students, because I teach lecture courses as well as studio courses, but particularly when I teach a class like art appreciation, which nobody wants to take, or African American art history, I tell them, don't look at the work, look into it, right? Look into the work, you might see something different. I'm not a big abstract expressionist, but the first time I saw Rothko, I cried, and I don't know why, you know? So it is a big part. I mean, I've been a teacher. I started very young as a teacher, and it's just important to me, especially at a Black college, that they get a real experience and the same experience that they could get anywhere else. They have that opportunity, and they need to embrace that. And so I have Mishka's been my right hand, so I'm teaching her everything. I don't treat all my students like this. They don't all get to come hang and eat good and all that stuff, but she's earned it. And so it's important to me. I'm a forever teacher. I'm a forever auntie, they tell me. And so, yeah, thanks.
What's next for you? You just come up with 4 residencies.
Yeah, I wish I could take a cruise. Go away, phone will be off. Don't talk to me, don't call me, don't leave me alone. But I don't have anything major coming up right now. So I'll just be creating new things. I have the show at the Post with the Freedman's Town pieces, and I'm enjoying pushing the boundaries with the bricks. And I don't consider myself a photographer, but Deborah Willis told me I was, so she said I am. I'm not going to argue with Deborah Willis. That, you know, if you know who she is. And so, I mean, I have the show up in Kansas City, and it'll be up through March. So I'll probably go back a couple of more times, but I don't have anything major right now. So when that's the case, it gives me time to rejuvenate and relax and create something new. Yes. Mhm.
Years, I'm not sure how many years ago,
Mhm.
but before the
Right.
in the talking,
Uh-huh.
and then I followed you.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
so it's always been one of
Yeah,
the years.
thank you. Thank you. I was hoping Michelle would come today. She said she would try, but she's like my fairy art mother. And so I don't know a Black artist that has not gone through the collective. That opportunity has always been there. And yeah, I did show Converse Real Talk there. That was 2022, early 2022. Yeah, it was in the windows for a long time. And then they had the boards inside. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was the ironing boards. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Haven't seen your work.
Thank you.
I think within Fabio friends, it seemed like material is a big part. Material great. Is there not being familiar with the process?
Okay.
Material, how difficult is it to create these objects? Life cycle.
Okay. So the brick prints are transfer prints, so they don't run through a press. And I've only been doing those since June. And so that's actually Lovey's process. And so I talked to her a lot about archival. I'm not going to sell anything that won't last. I'm not going to sell someone a bill of goods. And so I'm still learning about the longevity of those. These leaves, that leaf, I think that was probably 2018. I have leaves in my office from 2011 that look like I printed them yesterday. So sycamore leaves and magnolia leaves, they're like velvet. And so they're very absorbent to the ink. And so I'm always looking down. The cam, for whatever reason, has a lot of sycamore leaves. And the manil has great, don't tell them I'm still in their leaves over there. They have great magnolia leaves at the manil. And the thing about the magnolias is those have to be printed fresh and then they will form, they'll dance a little bit. The sycamores are either or. The sycamores in Kansas City were very rubbery, like, whereas the sycamores here have that velvet side to them. And then the cotton has been pretty much everything has lasted except the food prints. I print on cucumber paper and that's supposed to make a snacks. Cucumber paper, zucchini, squash, that fades over time. So if it's something like that, I won't sell it, but I'll show it. Yeah. Anybody else?
we have a question from Facebook.
Okay.
Sarah asked, how do you envision the display of your bricks?
So the bricks are at the post and they're floating. So they have D-rings on the back and we're able to put them so that you can't see the hardware. And the way that the manil displays their ancient works, that was my mindset because the bricks look like they've been excavated. And when you piece them together, that's the hardest part. Once we pop the bricks out the mold, it takes us a good 15 minutes to put it back together because it's like a puzzle. And then we put just a D-ring on the back and then a little spacer. And it literally looks like it's floating on the wall. Yeah, so they look really cool.
Have you ever considered building any kind of architectural structures out of them? Or do you still see them more as niche bricks?
I hadn't thought about that, but I might try. Sydney has me messed up too because she told me, oh, you should try jewelry. Ooh. They're concrete, so if you drop them, they'll break.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's things that can be added to make them more stable, but yeah, I'm playing with jewelry now. Sydney's not here. I can't give her a dirty looking person, but yeah, I'm going to mess with jewelry a little bit just to see. I'm curious now. Yeah. I know. Yeah.
Any more questions?
All right, I will pass the mic.
And I might have you mute that on
Sure.
Zoom if you don't mind.
I got it. Mute myself.
Okay. Qiqing, I'll let you get settled in for a second while I read your bio. Sound good?
Yes, she's muted.
Okay, yeah, I'll have her unmute when she's ready. I'll read this first. Qiqing Lin is a textile artist based in New York. She explores feminism, immigration, language, accessibility, and politics through materials and weaving. Her experiences growing up and working as a journalist in China has had a profound impact on her practice. Switching her medium from text to textiles, weaving has become her new language. Through spinning paper yarn and painting with threads, she looks into the complexities of family, mother-daughter relationships, class divides, and political depression. Qiqing's work takes the form of figurative tapestries, sculptural installations, writings, and social practice. She finds that being close to the materials and a laboring of the body is essential. She spins her own yarn, dyes her own colors, and weaves on a hand loom. She graduated with a BA in journalism in 2014 and an MFA in textiles at Parsons School of Design in 2023. The Qiqing, I'll leave it over. I'll hand it over to you, and please drop any questions you have for her in the chat, and I'll have you unmute yourself on Zoom, and we'll be ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Thank you. Okay. Hello, my name is Qiqing. I'm a textile artist, so I do weaving, spinning, and natural dyeing. First, I want to tell you a little bit of my background. I grew up in Guangdong province in China, so the southern part, very close to Hong Kong. I speak Cantonese and the very local dialects. And before switching to textile, I was a journalist based in Shanghai for 5 years. And my last job was with the New York Times Shanghai Bureau as a researcher and reporter, covering technology and politics. And the story how I switched completely from journalism to textile was 4 years ago. I took my first weaving class in New York on a reporting trip. It was a long reporting trip, so during the weekend I was thinking what can I do? And I saw a programmer, he tweeted something like, started to weave, and it's really interesting because programming and weaving has something in common that's all about building intricate blocks. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I search, are there any weaving class in New York? And good thing about New York is there always is something happening. So I took this introduction weaving class in a Japanese weaving studio. And I make this scarf. Now I can see the tension is completely off on the selvages. But my experience was great there. I really like the way that the loom works. It's a very smart design. So I decided, okay, I want to take all kind of workshops and classes I can find related to textile in China. And in the end, I decided, okay, I want to take it seriously. So I did this 2-year master degree at Parsons and graduated this year. So this is my background. And so because I'm not coming from a traditional textile background, so it's exploring a lot of things when I learned weaving. I was looking for a kind of material that could give structure to the weaving. So I tried nylon, wood, metal wire, elastic yarn. And in the end, when I tried paper, I feel okay, this could work because it's a kind of subtle material that it adds support, but nothing too rigid. So this is the first big piece that I made out of paper yarn. I recycled newspaper, prints from the school's printmaking studio, and some calligraphy paper. I dyed some of the yarn with madder roots and wove this big piece. So the idea was, can I make big piece of paper, weave a big piece of paper and fold it like origami. And but the problem is I don't know if it's going to work until I really made it. So I was really nervous for 2 weeks when I was weaving. I'm glad that it did work, the folds show up in the end. So this is the first experiment. Oh yeah, it's way too bright. Maybe a darker ones would be better. Yeah. Okay. And I want to talk a little bit about the tapestry series that I made last year and this year. It's titled Don't Believe a Word. So it's 4 tapestries, primarily woven with hand-spun paper yarn and naturally dyed. And each of these tapestries is a story from like different stages of my life. It's about family, gender, about attachment, about loss, about the disillusionment of written words. And it started because there was like a Chinese immigrant family in Brooklyn that getting rid of their books, like thousands of books in the basement. They're moving to another apartment. So I was helping them to basically like send these books out, and they gave me like a few boxes of these books, and I picked a dictionary. I feel like it's very representative of how immigrants adapting to a new life here. The first thing to do is to learn the language. So I use this dictionary, rip the pages, cut it into strips, and spun it into yarn on the spinning wheel. This is the process. So another way to like coloring the paper, I would like paint directly on mulberry paper, and on the right is the spinning wheel spinning process, showing how the yarn is forming on the spinning wheel bobbin. I also dyed some of the industrially made paper yarn. They're very strong, so they can go into the dye pot, no problem. And cotton with a cochineal, marigolds, logwoods. Wait, this one's not showing. Ooh. Oh, that's weird. Oh, all of them are not showing. Okay, what happened? That's weird. It's okay, I can go back to the first images because it has the 4 works. Yeah, so so bad the photos are not showing, but those are more like detail shots. So I made the first one on the left. It's called The Unborn Brothers. So it's about the 2 brothers that I almost had. It's partly related to China's one-child policy. And the material that I use is Joss paper. So it's a kind of paper with silver or golden metallic squares in the middle, and it's used in offerings that you would burn this paper for deceased family members. So I use this material because it's like remembering these family members that I almost had. And the second one is called She Was Always There. It's about my childhood dog. I had very sweet memories with her. And yeah, maybe it's a bit hard to see, but this one, so the technique is called double weave pickup. So it's like the weaving is made of 2 layers, and the top layer is like the darker parts. And I made like circles, some bigger and smaller ones, and using the paper because it has some strength, so the shape would stay. Because usually when you make tapestry, it's like left to right, right to left, and you pack it down. But this one, it's semi-transparent, that the yarn can go wherever they want. And then the third one is called Seduction. So for this one is about my experience starting to work as a journalist, and all the senior reporters and editors are usually men, and the younger journalists are women. So it's like a lot of other cultural fields that it's always the young woman looking up to the cultural elites. And sometimes you would find that, okay, they're actually not that talented. It's just so happens they're in that position. So I want to show these power imbalance. And for this piece, I use a literature history book that it's a thick book of over 1,000 pages, and only one of the authors mentioned is woman, so Emily Dixon. Yeah, so the last one, it's actually the first one that I made. I used the dictionary that I showed earlier from the Chinese family. It's called Self-Exile. So it's about a person uprooting herself from the original land and jumping to the unknown. Yeah, so that's the series that I completed recently. And let's go to, I also want to share with you some recent work that I make at the Craft Center. Oh, really? Yeah, why is all of them not working? That's weird. Instagram would work. I have some photos on Instagram.
Sure.
I wonder if it's because the formats of the photos are from iPhone. Yeah. Or do you think if I stop share and sharing again?
You can try.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it shows that the picture can't be displayed. That's weird.
Me to show on, I can share my screen and show on.
Okay, yeah, sure. Maybe the like the one on the right. Yes. Okay.
That's the little.
Yeah, I want to show a little bit like the process of making this one. This is like the first big piece that I made here, and it's made by hand spun paper yarn. So like the threads, they are created like individually, and each one is hand spun on a spinning wheel. And I'm very grateful to have the time and space to do it because it will take so much space to lay out all the paper. And so I did this by natural dyeing. Usually like fabric and yarn, you can just go to the dye pot and you can boil it for hours, it's okay. But paper, it's very fragile. So what I did is brush dyeing. So I would make very concentrated dye and use a big brush on top, and then hang it to dry. So this is like the step making the colored paper. And then I would cut it into strips. And usually like the traditional spinning paper ways that you would make a continuous thread, but I want to show the property of the paper more. So I left the ends of the paper while spinning and added little like small pieces inside. So it becomes like, a lot going on. Yeah, so this is the first piece called Phoenix. And then yeah, so I think the middle one shows some details of these bees. Yeah, some detail shots. We can go to the next. Thank you. Yes. So after dyeing the paper, so I use like the saffron wood chips for dyeing, and usually like these chips will be thrown away because it's like the paper, the color is exhausted. But I really like the wood chips. It was before dyeing, like the color was more like orange brown, and then afterwards it kind of like dyed itself reds. So I feel like the color becomes more elegant, look older. So I kept these wood chips and then use the linen thread that I dyed earlier to knot it into this installation. So I try not to throw away anything and recycle them. Yeah. Maybe the last one, yes, the one on the left, yes. I think that's the only photo. Oh, there's another one. Okay. Yeah, this is the last thing I want to share. So another thing that I tried doing with paper is dyeing with persimmon juice. So it's a kind of traditional dye used a lot in China and Japan. It's from unripe persimmon that's fermented and aged for more than 2 years. And it's a kind of like special dye because usually natural dye, it fades more or less over time. But this one, it's more like a stain. It's like the way that it works is decoloration in oxygen. So instead of fading within a few months, that the color would get darker and it reacts to the sun. So if you put it in the sun, that it would get darker. So it's like the magical part of these dye stuff. Yeah, so I use this on paper and spray it on top and then let it dry, crumble it, smooth it out, and repeat the process for 6 times. So in a week, that the paper becomes like pretty dark and has a leathery texture. So I feel like, okay, this is like a really interesting dye that changed the paper's quality a lot. And I made some weavings out of it that I don't have photos yet because it's just off the loom this week, but you're welcome to see them in my studio later. Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Oh, they're all double weave pickup. Yeah. Part of it is reversible because the structure of these like tapestries, like the figure parts, you can see it from the back. But I also add another layer of like tapestry weaving on top. So that part, you can't see it in the back. Yeah, so it's partly reversible. Mhm. The red part? The person jumping, that one. Yeah, so it's a kind of like a mix of techniques because like the structure is double weave pickup. But I feel like that's my thing because I'm not from a like weaving background. So I was like, okay, I'm just like trying to see if it works. So my professor told me that, oh, this is like something that no one has done it before. Like I was like, oh, okay, but it works. So it's like one side is like solid weave, it's packed down. And then the other side is tapestry weaving, but it's kind of airy, so it's not packed down at all. So it's like, it's, oh, that one I don't have it. Yeah, because they're kind of big, so I didn't like bring them here. But I have like the smaller samples of the same technique, a face and a pair of feet in the studio. Yeah.
I have a question. I know you harvested rainy last week in the garden. There's another plant as well.
Remy and Jutes.
So
Yeah.
what will you be doing?
I will think of something. Now, so far, I only use one branch from the jute because it's really nice that it's kind of an accident because like the jute stems are usually green, but one plant it was like lying on the ground for a while. So one side of the stem turned red. I guess it's kind of like apples turning red in the sun. So I use that stem to like in the piece that I made with the sapling wood chips because the color kind of matched. It's like the stem is red and the chips are red, the threads is red. So I just use it as a rocks. But for the rest of it, I was like thinking I want to like pull like fiber from it. But ideally I need a river to put the fiber and let it like rest there for a month. But I don't have it like here I'm not in New York. So I need to like figure something out. Another thing I can do is like I can like just place it like in a corner for a year, like let it completely dry, then maybe I can pull something. But I want to try using the plants from the garden.
Will you bring them back?
Yes, I will. Yeah.
know you're talking about the, or leaving these evidence behind, and you're not leaving the paper and with the dye comes to, you know, do you like to embrace those moments of, chance or like surprise in your work? Can you talk about that? Maybe a little more about embracing that?
Yeah, okay. I feel like a lot of accidents happened when I'm like making these things. Um, Especially like as I mentioned before, I'm not like from a like textile or weaving background, so a lot of things are new to me. And I do like reading that, oh, how it was done properly or in history. But as I'm using paper, these unconventional material, I would say, like in weaving, so a lot of these things are not written or not said. Some of like a lot, I feel like a lot of the information about using paper, it's from the paper making community. Or the like the printing community, but not so much from the textile world. So it's like kind of trying to like make something in between. Like I started to learn paper making, like just the basics, but that helps me to understand how like the fiber they're organized, and I can like think of ways to even spin them and weave them and collage them and use them in some ways that I don't know yet. Thank you so much. Hi.
I just become fascinated. You know, it's just amazing.
Thank you.
How much did your work as a reporter influence the rest of you?
I feel like for the themes that did like influence me a lot, I feel like when I was a reporter, there was a lot of anger and emotions that that has been brewing for years. But journalism was not like maybe not the good outlet for now, because there's a lot of also like censorship and things can't write about as a reporter in China. So I brought these emotions with me into textile, and when I think of things that I feel most strongly about, then I would like make them into work. So I feel like that working experience part, it turned into topics that I want to make something. I still want to say something, but just not like in words. I would make tapestries. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, some of them. I did both. So the paper that it's around like this long. So for each of this, so the ends are there are not so many ends actually, which is good for the structure because it's like more stable. But yeah, I did like add. I also cut like small pieces like the into like feather shape, and as when I'm spinning, I add them into the core, so it has a lot of ends flying in. Yeah.
Only seen commercial red yarn, but it's actually spun it up. So
Yeah, I've tried the more like industrially made like paper yarn that some of them are thicker, so it's more like rope. I think that's more the paper yarn that you can buy from the market was more like a rope like, and then you can make like baskets out of it. It's more structural. But for weaving, I need like thinner yarn and have more control over what kind of paper, texture, color that I want to use. I have to make my own basically.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks.
Let's see your yours full.
Okay, let's test this out real quick. Okay, thank y'all for bearing with us. Our last resident today is Terumi Saito. Terumi is a multidisciplinary artist working in fiber art and sculpture and is known for her backstrap weaving sculptures that utilize iconic jute ropes. Backstrap weaving, one of the earliest weaving techniques, has a rich history in Asia, South, and Central America. Japan's history of backstrap weaving dates back to the Yokoi period. Her unique approaches combine traditional and ancient backstrap weaving techniques, the use of natural dyes and fibers, and a meticulous labor-intensive weaving process. Saito received a BFA in graphic design from Tama Art University in Tokyo, Japan, and an MFA in textiles from Parsons School of Design in New York. And Terumi, I'm going to hand it over to you. Please drop any chats you have for her in the, or any questions you have for her in the chat.
Hey, hi everyone. I am Terumi Saito. Oh, sorry.
I think it was just
Okay, now it's working. Okay. Hey, hi. Thank you. Hey, hi everyone. I am Terumi Saito. I am an artist working in fiber art and sculpture. I currently live in New York City. A little bit about my background. I was born and raised in Mishima City in Shizuoka Prefecture in Japan. I grew up pretty close to Mount Fuji. And as Natalie mentioned, I have a BFA in graphic design from Tama Art University in Tokyo, Japan, and MFA in textiles from Parsons School of Design in New York, like Qiqing. But I graduated in 2020. I practice a backstrap weaving, one of the earliest weaving techniques which has a rich history in Asia and Central and South America. Japan's history of backstrap weaving dates to the Yayoi period. But only a few traditions in Japan continue to employ the backstrap weaving technique. One of them is in Hokkaido, within the Ainu textile culture. They make a jacket called atushi with a wood fiber from a tree. And there's another one in Hachijo Island in Tokyo. It's called kapeta ori. But unfortunately, the last person who knew this technique recently passed away. And then the third one is in Okinawa. It's called iha mensa. Backstrap weaving uses a simple loom made of thread and rods, but involves complex operations. Unlike advanced looms, it doesn't have wooden frameworks and metal heddles. So warp threads are manipulated with string heddles attached individually each time. Tension is maintained by anchoring threads to the weaver's waist and hooves or foot, requiring full body weaving engagement. This photo is a process that when I'm creating a string heddles, so in order to open the warp and then put the weft, each time you need to create a heddle with a string, picking up one by one. And I would like to touch upon a little visual inspiration from my background. I grew up in a traditional Japanese style house with my family who cherished traditional rituals and objects, which became my inspiration for the future. On the left side, this is a kamidana, which is a Shinto altar. Shinto is a Japanese religious tradition incorporating the worship of ancestors and nature spirit and a belief in sacred power in both animate and inanimate things. On the bottom, you can see the offerings for the altar. On the right side, this is a little shrine. And then the god is called Oinari-sama. And then these are the god of harvest and wealth and fertility. My grandparents were a small farmer, and I grew up with them in this small city in Mishima City. Then, as you saw, a rope in here. This rope is called shimenawa. Shime means tie. Nawa means rope in Japanese. In the traditional beliefs, the twisted rope called shimenawa holds a sacred significance. It serves as symbolic boundary, acts as a barrier, preventing impurities from entering the space. By installing the shimenawa as a boundary within a house or space, it offers a protection from negative influence. And I would like to share some of my past projects. This is a project called Rise Like a Phoenix from the Ashes in 2019. This was a project during my MFA Textiles program at Parsons. This is an installation and narrative that chronicles the transformation of withering pine tree reborn into a radiant phoenix. The series conveys the profound essence of time-honored artistry throughout the intricate Andean backstroke weaving techniques. The installation view. My journey into the Andean backstroke weaving began during my time at the Architopia International Artist Residency Program in Urubamba, Peru in 2019, where I had the privilege of closely learning with the master weaver from Chinchero, Peru. Fortunately, I wasn't allowed to take photos during the class to protect the privacy of the master weavers, but here's some photos from the studio at the residency program. The following video, I would like to share how patterns are woven by picking up the warps. Andean backstroke weaving is one of the highly complex techniques. I was going to play in a double speed because it's a slow process, but sorry, it doesn't work. So what I'm doing is so for this backstroke weaving, I have a 3-row of the patterns, and each time I need to pick up the warps for each row before I put the weft. So first I finish the center part, and then I'm working on the right side. So I am picking to create the patterns and holding with my finger. Then keep them up, and then I reposition the wooden beam. And then lastly, I am going to pick up the 3rd row. Also, even though I was looking at the weaving chart that I took a note when I was learning from the master weavers, it is very complicated, and I also often made a lot of mistakes in this piece. So finally, I put the warp. I can go. Then I'm tightening the tension. Up. I'm preparing for the next row. Tightening up. Then I'm pulling up. That's the string heddle that I was talking about. And I open the warp. Then continue weaving. In 2020, I fortunately got a research fund and a research grant, and I traveled to Guatemala to further learn and research about bacterial weaving and natural dyeing techniques. I learned Guatemalan bacterial weaving from master weaving teachers Lydia Carmelina. They're very lovely sisters. I learned a supplementary weft pattern technique during this research trip in Guatemala, which is you have a plain weave, but you add additional weft as you go. And I also had an opportunity to visit Lydia's house, and I am learning how to warp and set up a bachelor loom. These are the photos of the family members weaving together on the backstrap loom. You can see the family members, Lydia, Israelita, Felisa, Carmelina. I would like to talk about the next project. This was my thesis project at the MFA Textiles program. It's called the Pantheon of Bird Deities. The Pantheon of Bird Deities comprise a collection of intricately woven structures that have been brought to life as wearable art pieces. Throughout history, the phoenix and peacock have served as enduring symbols of rebirth and courage in diverse cultures. While the quote, "rise like a phoenix from the ashes" is well known, the peacock was believed to have a unique ability to consume poisons such as fear and suffering and ease negative energy, thereby embodying the concept of acceptance and compassion. I express these values of resilience and bravery through intricate, unconventional, and hybrid textile practices. Each piece is carefully hand-woven using natural fibers and traditional and Asian bachelor weaving methods. There are some bachelor woven pieces which I turn into a wearable art. There's some another mask. The piece. There's some behind the scenes. On the left side, you can see the bachelor weaving in progress. On the right side, it's a natural dyed silk yarns. And here you can see after I finished the bachelor weaving, I incorporate a technique called coiling for the embellishment, and I wrap the ropes with a cotton yarn to connect them to create a shape outside of the pieces. This piece was exhibited at the group exhibition hybrid at Mana Contemporary in Jersey City, New Jersey. And the next project is Embracing Rising to the Sky. Last year, my dear grandmother passed away. Sorry. Being in New York, I couldn't attend the funeral in Japan, which have taken place within a few days. So I created an artwork as a memorial to convey my feelings of regret and gratitude. This creation served as a means of catharsis, aiding me in processing emotions of sadness and regret. The artwork portrays my grandmother's spirit peacefully and gracefully ascending to heaven, resembling a dragon. It also envisions her reuniting with my grandfather in a heaven, a representation of their long-awaited reunion. These are the detail shots. I had an opportunity to exhibit this piece at the Art Fair Spectra Miami at Miami, Florida. There's behind the scenes of the bachelor weaving. And the last project I would like to talk is the recent project I worked. This was a project commissioned by the British cruise line company, Cunard, to celebrate the launch of their new ship, Queen Anne. Qiqing, Guardian of the Voyage, is a hand-woven sculpture that reinterprets ancestral textile techniques and celebrates Cunard's iconic lion figurehead. After delving into the Cunard digital archive images, I was drawn into the historical imagery of animals, and in particular, Cunard's much celebrated lion insignia. My research explores the concept of lions as ancient guardian and protectors. Shishi means lion in Japanese, and it is said to drive away misfortune and bring good fortune. By combining the symbol of the lion with the symbol of the sacred twisted rope Shimenawa, I created a sculpture which symbolizes protection, a guardian of the voyage for Queen Anne. The group exhibition. This is me working on backstroke weaving at my home studio in Brooklyn, New York. I am finishing off the weaving by securing the end with metal wire. And lastly, I would like to quickly share time at Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. Some studio shot. I'm grateful for the time and space to work on new projects such as clay and fibers. I'm also working on some natural dyes with itajime dyeing technique. Itajime is a traditional Japanese pressure resist dyeing technique. I'm also very happy that I have been able to work on warping in an ideal form for backstroke weaving at Craft Garden, which I can stick the wooden dowels to the ground. And I'm very excited to dye these silk warps with natural dyes. Thank you so much.
As your own charts or patterns to follow?
So I currently whenever I make a work-faced pattern like the Peruvian one, I look some books and reference, but I was actually wanting to create a method to make my original pattern, and that's actually this new project that I am incorporating the dyeing technique for fabric into yarn. Yeah, that's it.
When you were doing the plant crystals dyeing rather than sugar or any cotton.
So
Because I noticed in the red one, it looked like you got places.
yes, yeah. Yeah, so that was a cut yarn. I actually didn't include in this slide, but there was a project that I worked with a traditional textile company in Japan, and they make very beautiful, intricate ikat called kurume kasuri. Kasuri means ikat in Japanese. And then the red one was provided by them as a upcycle yarn. Yeah, so very grateful to get the beautiful ikat yarn. Those are the thread type, not the wooden pressure. Like
Inspiration there. While thinking the tribes now wearable.
so there was a very early project that I did with the MFA program. It was like a installation performance piece, which I didn't include in here. So initial direction for me was make installation and performance. So when I was creating the wearable boots, I was actually thinking about doing some performance, but actually when I graduated was May 2020. So we all went home to create the thesis project, and the plan kind of little changed. So all the photos that you saw was I photo shooted with my roommates, my room with the white bedding sheets, or like outside of the house, and like in front of like beautiful, nice like green flowers, like some neighbor's garden. Yeah, I would like to maybe go back and discover later the performance aspect. Yeah.
It's interesting because you're mixing because you're welcome to go into all of their studios down here, but the ceramics that you're creating, that you're incorporating the rope and natural materials into it. Wonderful to see that play of materials and you can see the larger rope included. Do you think you'll do any weavings with them, or do you see them more as the ropes included in the ceramics?
Oh, yeah. So my current project is making a ceramic as a body, and I'm also making a weaving trying to attach them, so like dress them. I was thinking like glaze them with a textile.
Oh,
Yeah, let's see.
All of your work, I'm really curious about from the grant that you received.
Oh.
What was it?
That was the Parsons.
Okay.
Yeah, Parsons Graduate Research Fund.
It's kind of the same question. Did you know each other when you were in school? Okay, so you both kind of graduated recently. Okay.
Went to the same program, but in different year.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a chance that they both were scheduled.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't intended, it just happened to work best with their schedule and our schedule. It wasn't an
Yeah.
intention to.
We didn't know until like summer. Yeah.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
And I'm very encouraged that did Parsons encourage you to apply for the grants for funding? Or was that something you found on your own? Because it's very, over the years, there's been fewer and fewer programs in the folks.
Yeah.
And so the idea that they're helping you get permission, helping you get more exposure is very encouraging to see that people are still looking and that people are still using that background. So it's very it's a very labor intensive. So was it your professors though that encouraged you to apply for the grants? And
Yeah, for me, yeah, the professors were pushing us to apply for a great opportunity. The Peru.
For Peru and
I think it's more students' initiative, like, because I was like talking to professors that to residency, and it did help me a lot, like to write an artist statement, which is like a file, like different versions, which is and write about what you want to do in their residency. Yeah, so I think like one thing to mention is that I think these Parsons MFA textile is a little bit special. This is a new program. As you said, like maybe fiber regions right down. But this one is founded in 2018. You're the first generation. So at generation 1, I'm generation 4. And yeah, it was a very new program. And it was founded with the idea that they want to create like an interdisciplinary program. So that's why they accepted me. Textile.
Me too, yeah.
Student.
Because I also don't have a textile background, but yeah, I had a chance to explore.
Yeah, they would teach like us all the introduction classes in the first year, like maybe 9. So that's kind of nice. And I have like classmates with like textile fashion background as well. So that's I feel like a program designed to bring people from other fields to work in textile.
glad to hear it. This is really nice.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy. Thank you for learning so much.
Thank you all for being here today. Please join us in the resident studios if you'd like to visit their studios. Thank you if you joined us online. We'll have more talks coming up this year. As usual, most of their residents are here in their studios on Saturday and one other day of the week. So please come and visit us soon. Thank you.